A mother falls and breaks her hip. A father has a minor stroke and recovers in rehab. These are the kinds of triggers that force families to think, often for the first time, about their options for elder care. But during our series, You're Not Alone, we've learned it's critical to talk with family members before you need to, because, as WGBH's Edgar Herwick reports, even if you are proactive, it can still be rough going.
It's been 5 years since James Ward passed away at the age of 82. His wife, Grace, now lives independently in the same Tennessee house where she's been for the past 30 years. She is 82 now and in relatively good health. She's financially stable, involved in a senior group, and active in her church. Their son, Alan, lives in Rhode Island. He recalls a simple thing his father did before he died that Alan has come to view as extraordinary.
My father began to realize at a certain point that his health was declining, and he made a decision at that point that he wanted to prepare for the fact that my mother was going to outlive him. So he pulled us together and sort of gave us a task to be responsible and to take care of her.
It was a sobering moment for Ward and his brother, 8 years his senior.
He was really matter-of-fact about it, and this is what needs to happen, and I want you boys to take care of this. And, you know, my brother and I just looked at each other and said, that's what we're going to do.
But Ward admits in hindsight that he had no idea what that really meant.
There was more responsibility there than I think I probably appreciated initially, and I think my brother might agree with me on that particular point.
So the Ward brothers were added to the checking and savings accounts, put in charge of a modest portfolio of investments, life insurance policies, and health insurance plans, and the ownership and upkeep of the house. Ward says that caring for his mother was not something he decided to do that day. It's something he decides to do every single day.
I talk to her every day. I call her after work, check in on her to see how she's doing, how's the day's going. I can get a lot from her voice.
He and his brother keep in close touch about their mother's care. Ward says that maintaining that united front is hard work, but incredibly important.
We both keep in touch on a fairly regular basis. He will call me and just say, I want to register a conversation that I had with Mom, and let me know if you see or hear anything that's similar to that.
Ward has been shocked to learn just how many people are seeking to take advantage of his mother, like aggressive direct mailers and telemarketers. Plus, she's active online, which has created a whole new set of problems.
The Internet's the Wild West to all of us, but it's particularly daunting to, you know, a woman who's 82 and living alone, or a man who's 82 and living alone, and no one there to sort of bounce this off. Does this look legitimate? Is it not legitimate? That kind of thing.
Ward is coordinating all of this with hundreds of miles separating him in Rhode Island from his brother in Michigan and his mother in Tennessee. That, of course, brings its own challenges, like when his mother is under the weather and Ward needs to enlist the help of a home care specialist.
It's not someone that would be administering medication or anything, but someone who can just come and be there for her for a few hours and maybe take her to the grocery store or go to the grocery store on her behalf and pick up some things.
Balancing it all is no small effort, but it's one that Ward wouldn't trade for the world.
Well, I want her to be happy and independent, and I want her to be healthy, so I'm focused on that, and that's a lot of work. So that's what I want to do.
Well, my next guest is a specialist who helps families choose the best care options. Dr. Vicki Jackson is the Director of Palliative Care at Mass General Hospital. Welcome.
Thank you.
So listening to that, you kind of hope that Alan Ward has made the next step, which is she's not going to be able to live in that home forever. Mm-hmm. So you hope he's had that conversation with the brother and the mother, and they know. So it's never ideal to be thousands of miles apart.
It isn't. It certainly makes all of these difficult conversations so much more difficult. Also, I think there's the worry about being able to know how much does she really need? Is she needing more help than we can see, because we're actually not laying eyes on her at that particular moment?
One of your specialty, palliative, I mean, I think most people understand what it is, but you might want to go into a little bit more depth about it. I mean, because often it means there's a helpless feeling in the end when a parent is dying, and how proactive should you be? Do you do feeding tubes? Do you do, and how do you go about advising people?
Yeah, it's a great question. So palliative care is a medical subspecialty. We care for patients with serious illness, and our job is to help them live as well as they can for as long as they can. We deal with symptoms like pain, other physical symptoms. We also help patients and families coping with serious illness, because it isn't easy, as Alan and his brother are noticing. Also, we help with sort of the psychological coping as well as medical decision making. And as you're saying, often there are many medical decisions over the course of an illness that we need to help patients and families think through.
I mean, I sometimes think of palliative as kind of first do no harm, just do nothing if that's the best option.
Yeah, I guess I think about it somewhat differently. When I walk into a room with a patient, I say to them, my job is to help you live as well as you can for as long as you can with this serious illness. And that actually may be quite active. I may be recommending testing, I may be recommending procedures, but the goal is really to help them live fully in the context of knowing that life is likely going to be shorter than what we had hoped, right? It's often in the context of either an incurable illness or an illness that's really progressing over time. We care for patients for years before the end of their life with the goal of helping them live fully, and then helping, when we get to that point with families, navigating these tricky decisions, as you said, like feeding tubes, places of care, and also medical interventions. Would that be helpful and promote a quality of life that's acceptable to the patient, or would it not?
So we've been getting lots of feedback on our website at WGBHnews.org in our You're Not Alone series. And here's something from Robin. She writes, if your loved one is in senior housing, get to know the staff. Ask about their weekends. Tell them your stories about your loved one. Treat them to goodies sometimes. And remember to say thank you for their hard work. Now, that sounds okay, but that would make me worried a little bit. Like, you feel like you almost have to bribe these people to make them happier.
I mean, I guess the way I hear that is all of this support is about being in relationship. And the more that we can help the caregivers in assisted living or in a nursing facility be able to know your loved one and to know you, the better that's going to go. So I think it's really about being in relationship and helping them understand what's important to your loved one. And I don't think it's bribing. I think it's just helping build a relationship.
I didn't mean it quite like that, but you know what I mean.
Yeah.
Here's another one. This is anonymous. Be aware, question and track what your loved one is taking for meds. Oftentimes, elderly patients are going to various specialists, and no professional seems to be really looking over the whole spectrum of meds to ensure safety. Well, I've been saying this for decades.
Right.
I mean, so many older people are vastly over-medicated. Before you know it, they're taking a witch's cauldron of pills, and they don't know what is for what. They couldn't even tell you what the names of them are or what they're for. And they've got these piles of things and these, breakout things for the week they have to day. They have no idea.
Right. I think it's a great point. And I think part of what happens with our medical technology and all the subspecialists that may be needed to care for somebody with serious illness is that a variety of clinicians may be doing what they think is perfect for the kidneys or for the heart. But it's why it's critically important to have someone, it's often a primary care clinician, who is sort of, the quarterback or the coach. And I think that is, we need somebody looking at all of these interventions because they affect one another. And I think you're right. It's incredibly difficult for patients of advancing age who don't have a lot of support to know how to effectively take those medications. Often it can be helpful to have a nurse come into the home to help with that. And also that the patient and family member be in dialogue with the clinician to say, can we simplify this? Can we make it the easiest regimen that will help me function as well as I can? But I need to make sure it's something I can actually give to myself, administer.
All right, so here's another one from Eileen. This is one I learned the hard way. Scan a copy of the healthcare proxy, durable power of attorney, and list of medications into a folder on your smartphone where whenever your loved one needs care, this info can be emailed from wherever you are. I had this happen to me, and of course, the person had the nerve to ask for me for the original healthcare proxy or the original power of attorney in my case. It was like, yeah, I'll get that out with my original birth certificate and hand it to you.
Right. So I think it's critically important to have this documentation. So, especially so in Massachusetts, without having a healthcare proxy form, just being a a sibling or a child or a spouse even does not automatically say that you have the right to make those decisions. So part of that is really critically important to have that documentation. I think also with care being delivered in so many settings, it's hard for our care systems to be integrated at times to be able to know critically what medication may this person be taking and how does that impact their care in the emergency room. I think also when we think about, it's not just important to have the healthcare proxy form, but it's also really critically important that there's been a dialogue. And I know that that's been part of what you've been talking about this week, which is critically important. And I think the dialogue is important between the patient and their loved ones. It's also critically important between the patient and loved ones and the caregiving team. Right? So and this information goes both ways.
This is like do not resuscitate and all those kinds
and
of
things. It may not even be a do not resuscitate order. It may be the patient may need to tell the clinician what their goals and values are, what's important to them, what would be acceptable, what wouldn't be. And I also think we also have to empower patients to ask clinicians, what do you think is going to happen with this illness in the next year? What do you think is the likely trajectory in the next 2 years, 3 years? That helps patients and families plan. I mean, I think in the case of the Ward family, I wonder, would that be helpful to them to know what to anticipate? Yeah. In the next 3 months, mom might need extra care. How are we going to manage that with her sons being in different areas of the country?
All right, Vicki Jackson, great advice.